Support for Stereophonic comes from AEA ribbon mics and preamps, crafting the world's finest ribbon microphones and preamps for the modern artist and engineer. To learn more, visit aearibbonmics.com. Welcome to this edition of Stereophonic, a weekly conversation series with tips and tales from deep inside the music industry. If you're enjoying this podcast, please rate us and subscribe on iTunes. And now let's go into the studio with our host, Dan Kimpel, and today's special guest.
We would like to introduce our guest, Claudia Brant, with a short list of artists for whom she's written. Latin superstars Gloria Trevi, Luis Fonsi, and David Bustamante, crossover artists Enrique Iglesias and Ricky Martin, and pop hit makers Fifth Harmony, John Legend, Josh Groban, and Barbra Streisand. Inducted into the Latin Songwriters Hall of Fame, Claudia travels the world as one of the most prolific songwriters in modern music. She's also an accomplished producer and a recording artist with a collection of solo releases.
Some people tell me that I'm a little bit of a chameleon. You know, one day I'm writing reggaeton, and the other day I'm writing a ranchera, and the other day I'm writing an English song for like an urban group. But I like that. That makes it more interesting. And I think that I'm able to do that because I learned from co-writing with completely different people.
In this Stereophonic episode, we meet a creator whose words and melodies cross all conceivable borders as they resonate worldwide. Stereophonic is on the road again. We're in Woodland Hills, California. We're in a beautiful location. It's a studio attached to a home of a hit songwriter and producer and entrepreneur and label owner and arts advocate, Claudia Brant. Hi, Claudia.
Hello. Happy to have you here.
It's great to be here. I've been here once before, and as I look around at the walls, all these awards and platinum records and gold records, and you're surrounded by a lot of affirmation everywhere that I look.
Yeah, I mean, I love my job. I always say that, and it's good to see that, you know, whatever I did was pretty much well done because I got all these results and all these awards and all these things that a recognition of my career, of what I've done throughout probably the past 25 years.
Yes. It's an enduring career.
Yeah.
But I want to start in the present, being what's most interesting to us right now is the thought that, you know, with all of the accolades that you have received as a songwriter, you are at heart very much an artist and an amazing singer, and you are now working on your latest recording project for you as an artist. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's a project that's very dear to my heart because I've been thinking about putting this record together for 2 or 3 years now. The first idea was to do this boleros record in Cuba. That was the initial idea, and then we switched into different directions, and we ended up deciding that we were going to do it here in LA. It was going to be easier, and the record was not going to be so much about old boleros, but it was going to be mostly about recording all those songs that are so beautiful that will never get cut by a mainstream artist and be a single because they're too pretty or too interesting or they have too many chords, or the melody travels in a way that not a lot of singers would be able to sing it, because that's the truth. You know, the music business is really complicated right now, and what's being played on the radio, that 90% of it, I don't like it. And I listen to it, and I go through the songs because my kids play it, and because I have to be current with what's a hit song because of my day job, I'd say that. And I still love it, and I enjoy it and all, but when it comes a time to get in the studio, I really need to record what I think it's closest to what I like music-wise. And if I grew up listening to world music and jazz and Brazilian music and flamenco music, I can't really go and just get in the studio to cut 10 big hits or big pop songs, because that's not my nature. That's not what I want to deliver. So I teamed up with Cheche Alara, who's like my brother. He's been a friend of mine since I got here. You know that very well. And with Mugi Canasio, who's also a very good friend of mine, and he has worked with every Brazilian artist there is, and I admire him very much. He has a wide knowledge of Brazilian music, and he has worked with everyone from Jorge Gilberto to Ivan Lins to Elis Regina to Maria Bethania, and those are all artists that I've been listening to since I was 6 years old. So we decided to team up and do this record that's going to be basically for the love of music and beautiful songs. And I have 4 featured artists that I adore, and they're not mainstream artists, and that's what I like the most. So they're going to be singing with me in the album as well.
Great. You've launched your own record label, is that correct?
Well, I have my own record label. I've had it, when I released the previous album, which was Manuscrito, who was actually nominated for 2 Latin Grammys. I did it through my label. And now the idea is to launch it through my label, too. We might try to get some sort of distribution, because with the music that I'm going to record, it's something that it could easily work in Europe or South America. So I'm thinking about that. I'm considering that, but I'm definitely gonna be the one paying for it, and I want to keep the masters and have complete ownership of what I'm gonna do.
Manuscrito was done very organically. It was almost like a live record, is that correct? Is that the same approach you're going to take with the new one?
It's probably going to be the same. We're going to record everything live, and I'm going to sing with the band at East West. And we're going to add some strings or some horns, maybe here, maybe over there. La Marisol from La Santa Cecilia is one of my guests, so we're going to sing together. And then I have Arnaldo Antunes, who's one of the guys from Tribalistas. He's also going to sing. We're going to cut a song in Portuguese that we wrote together. And then I'm going to have Antonio Carmona, who was the lead singer of Ketama, and he might cut his vocals in Spain. And then the other guest is Alex Cuba, who will be probably recording in Canada. So it's, it's an interesting, it's the other side of the music completely from what I do on my day job, which is, writing hit songs for big artists. And I love it too, but this record is more completely on the left side of the spectrum.
Well, let's talk about your day job just a little bit. But okay. The last time I was here, the occasion was, it was about a year ago, the occasion was that you were being inducted into the Latin Songwriters Hall of Fame in Miami. Yeah. So how was that night? How was that evening of the induction?
Oh, it was beautiful. It was really great. I was the award was presented to me by my publisher, the head of Universal Publishing in Miami, who's a good friend of mine, Alexandra Lyurikov. And then I had the honor to have Leslie Grace and Cani Garcia and Luis Fonsi singing, some of my songs, and then we sang one all together, and it was a really beautiful moment. And Cheche came with me. He MD'd the whole section, and it was great. My kids were there, my mom was there, everyone was happy. It was pretty good. And the best thing about it is that I left Miami. I was so happy, and then I took a flight to Sao Paulo and Rio, and I spent a week writing with Brazilian composers and artists. So it was, the whole thing altogether was perfect.
The Brazilian thing seems to be a through line. You mentioned that you heard Brazilian music growing up in Argentina. Do you speak Portuguese?
I do.
Oh, cool.
Not perfect, but I do.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
So is it more in the idiom, the pop idiom of Brazilian music, the jazz idiom of Brazilian music, the bossa nova, or?
Well, what it's going to be in the record is mostly, I would say, bossa nova, that kind of thing. There's one song that I wrote with, when I was there last year, I wrote with Marcos Valle, who is one of the guys that started the whole thing with Antonio Carlos Jobim and Vinicius, and he's probably like 75, and he's quite a character. And my publisher took me to his house, and we sat at the piano, and we wrote a song in like half an hour, and the song is beautiful. And I said, well, why not? I'm going to record this. For me to have a song that I wrote with that guy, who was one of the main guys in the movement, it's just great. And then I met with Toquinho, and I had sessions with other guys that usually work with Caetano Veloso and with Javan, and it was just beautiful. I mean, everything there. The spirit of the songwriting there and the production, I think, is less corrupt than here. You know, there's a lot of let's get together and write a song, and it doesn't matter, let's have fun. Here, you just basically learn that you're not going to get in the room with someone if they don't sell any records, or you're not going to get in the room with someone that didn't have any cuts just to have fun. I mean, I do it sometimes anyways, but it's very hard to put that in your schedule when everything has to be made for purpose and you're supposed to write a hit song so the A&R is happy and the manager is happy and the artist is happy and it becomes a single and everyone makes money. It doesn't happen very often, like, you know, hey, let's get together and hang out and see what happens.
But the hangout method is interesting. In when you work with major artists, one of the things that you've explained to me is that you use this environment around us. They come here and they spend time with you over a period of days sometimes, correct?
Yeah. I mean, what I love the most from my job is that I feel like I'm a little bit of a therapist in a way, you know, because I get to know these people and then they end up telling me stories and sharing things that maybe they don't even share with their own friends. And I'm a complete stranger, but somehow I connect with not all of them, but with a lot of them. And we spend 3-4 days together, you know, from 10 a.m. till 12 midnight. And they end up having dinner with my children. And, you know, it's so cool to kind of get into this world and they open their doors and you suddenly learn so much from someone that's completely different from you and comes from a completely different heritage or country or culture, you know. It's fascinating. I had the pleasure of, I didn't get to share this with you because I saw you a long time ago, but when I was in Spain 2 months ago, I was invited to Antonio Carmona's house for 10 days. I stayed there with my children in the south of Spain, in Andalusia. They have this gorgeous house by the beach. And he shares the land with Rosario Flores, who's one of my favorite artists ever. And I worked with her in her album. So, you know, she would come with a guitar in the morning and say, like, what are you doing? Are you busy? No? Well, let's play. Okay. And, you know, and we were like 1 block away from the beach and the sun was shining and I was having my mate and she would come with the guitar and we would play and there was no, oh my God, we need to write a hit song because tomorrow I have a meeting with the A&R and I have to show him what we did. No, we were just hanging out. For me, it was interesting to get that, I fed myself with that. So when I came back from Spain, I was ready to get back to work. If you can manage to keep those things that are unique, that's the only way I think I can keep going with what I do every day. Because if not, it's very hard.
It's been very interesting over the last summer to see Latin music become mainstream American pop music, you know, with Despacito, Luis Fonsi, Daddy Yankee, and the addition of Justin Bieber. In a way, it didn't seem like a surprise. I mean, I think Latin music is always been a part of the current of North American pop music in a lot of different ways. I mean, is that the way that you see it? Do you see it as one thing, or are they separated out for you, those markets?
Well, I think that there was a moment when Ricky came out with La Vida Loca that it was, everyone thought, oh, now Latin music. But then it kind of faded out and it didn't really happen. I see that what just happened with Fonsi might be something that it's there to stay because I see that every day and I hear that labels are working on other collaborations between Anglo artists and Latin artists. So I think it's a great thing. You know, I was just in France in meetings with Universal and Warner and they want me to go there to write because they want to have the Latin thing, even though in France, which is a completely different, it still comes from the Latin, but it's still a completely different world, music-wise. And they want it. They want it because they think that's the next big thing. So, you know, we just have to be careful. Try to keep writing good material. Because if you look at the charts in the Billboard charts, the urban slash reggaeton, it's the 15 first spots. It's all that. And I would say that probably 70% of it is pretty lame. So there has to be a way where good music and real songs can be intertwined with that style of music, so that that style of music doesn't become crappy. Because it's like what I hear on the radio most of the times, and what is on the charts is like, it's basically the same loop with the same chords and somehow a kind of a different melody on top of it, and really basic and words. But the thing is, like, if you give people a lot of that, they will buy it because it's the only thing they have. If you try to deliver something that's a little better or more interesting, and you believe in it and you push for it, I always think that the UK music market, or whatever, how they do it in the labels there, I don't know how it works, but they are the only ones that always come up with some interesting surprise,
Yeah.
because you have Adele and you have Ed Sheeran and you have Sam Smith, and they don't sound like anything else. But if you play the radio here, for me it's just like one long track with like people mumbling on top of it, things that don't really make much sense. Sorry, I'm too honest. But I sometimes I feel like, oh my God, what are we doing here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
Well,
sad.
but you travel. It's so great how much you get to travel as a writer and to different cultures. I know you, as you mentioned, you really go all around the world to work with different people, right? And that must be inspiring to you as a writer. I mean, you get to actually live in those environments, or is it all work when you're on a travel thing? I mean, you mentioned, obviously, France sounds fabulous.
Yeah, France sounds fabulous, and Spain too. And
Yeah.
I just had a wonderful experience. I went to Colombia for the second time. And I got to spend the week with these producers that are, the oldest is probably 26. So they call me, I come with my computer and my book, and they call me, oh, here comes the professor, and they make fun of me. And we work like, from 12 noon to like 3 a.m. in the morning every day, and it's pretty intense. But, they have a completely different take on how to write a song and what the structure of a song is and how everything should be built, starting with the rhythm. And, they explained to me a lot of things about Colombian music and the dembow and how the reggaeton developed. And, for me, it was, at 50 years old, it was kind of like taking a class on something that I've never heard of. Because I can go ahead and tell you, yeah, like most of the songs on the charts are crap and it's the same thing over and over. But I never got to really learn where all this came from. And when I was with them, these kids, they spent like 3-4 hours showing me samples and telling me this is the music that comes from this part of Colombia and this comes from another. I was actually like fascinated because it was something that I never knew. I never got to experience. I never really understood where it came from. So it really changed my perspective on what I think about reggaeton. There was a moment where I really hated it because I was, always a pop writer who suddenly gets like thrown out of the bus because everyone wants reggaeton and I don't write reggaeton. What am I going to do? Well, now I learned and I understood a lot of things. And I have a single that came out last week that I wrote with them, and it's on the charts, and it's fine, and I'm happy. But I really got to understand how that works. And that was because I was there. I was in Medellin for a week, and I got to learn.
Can you dance El Perro?
No, I can't do that. I don't want to do that either. My daughter probably can. I don't want to do it.
That's funny. That's funny. You mentioned the mainstream pop people, and you've worked with some incredible mainstream folks, people, like Desmond Child or David Foster, and that's really incredible. What's the method like working with someone with that kind of a reputation? Say, like, let's talk about Desmond Child.
Well, I adore him, and he taught me so many great things. But it was in the beginning when I first met him and I started working with him, it was really hard because he has, he's very selective and he has this like very high standards and it was very, very hard for me to please him with anything I would write. He would say no, 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 no. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die here or I'm going to kill him. And then, probably the first day I sat with him and Ricky Martin, which was when we were doing Ricky's record Mass, and we were at Ricky's house in Miami for a week. And the first day, it was like I was exhausted and there was nothing I would come up with that he would like. And then suddenly, I don't know, something changed. And I read a couple lines to him, and he only looked at Ricky and said, "She's good." And I was like, man, finally. So after that, everything went well, and he kind of took me under his wing, and he taught me a lot of things, and I'm just completely grateful for what I learned from him, but it was really hard. And I had a similar experience last year with a completely different character and half Desmond's age, which is Bruno. Mm-hmm. And it's a very, very hard to please creator because he's so talented and so brilliant that if he changes a line I wrote 20 times because he thinks it's not quite right, whatever comment he makes or whatever critique he makes, it makes total sense. So I just had to shut up and listen and write it 20 more times until he was happy with it.
You referenced Bruno, of course. You're speaking of Bruno Mars,
yeah.
And who was well known for his attention to musical detail.
Yeah, he's insanely great. I mean, it's like there's nothing I can say. A couple of times I got mad at him in a funny way because I was like, man, I mean, I'm 50 years old. I've been writing songs for 30 years, and now you're driving me insane. But he was right. Every comment he made was right. So I couldn't argue, and it's okay.
It's interesting. I know you worked with David Foster. David has a saying that good is the enemy of great. Like something's good or it's good enough, but that's not great.
Yeah.
And I find that very interesting.
Yeah, David is genius too. I remember a line from David when we were cutting. I think we're cutting strings on a song I had on Closer, Josh Groban's record, and George Calandrelli was conducting, and he did the arrangement. It was just fantastic. And, they did one take, and it was perfect. And he turns around, looks at me, and goes, "What's wrong about that?" All these people have, their standards are so high. And I think I learned a lot from that because I don't allow myself to be late when I have to deliver something or like write it fast because I want to deliver it sooner or, I just have to keep a lot of attention on the detail too because I'm here and I have all these awards and everything I accomplished because I really respect the opportunity that I was given when I moved to the States, and I need to comply with that and make sure that I don't deliver something that's good. It has to make a difference, That's how I feel.
Having met you when you first moved to the States, I always found it very interesting that instead of choosing the obvious places to move that were Latin music capitals, being New York and Miami, you chose Los Angeles. But as you've said, at that time, there was just so much going on in Los Angeles. It must have been incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, I think I moved basically because of that, because I went to Miami and I saw what was going on there, and I thought that it was not enough for what I wanted to learn. And here I would come and there'll be like people playing every night on different spots, and everything was like different genres and styles, and it was so interesting. And there was still room for the Latin market, but I thought I was going to be able to develop myself in a lot of other fields are generous because LA, it's like everything happens here. I don't care what people says about Miami or New York. I think this is a place to be. If you're a musician or a writer or a producer or an engineer, I still think it's LA.
What was the breakthrough? What was the first thing that happened to you here when you moved here that really kind of opened the door?
My first big single, which was Fonsi's No Me Doy Por Vencido, because that was on the charts for so many weeks, and the record got nominated, and then we ended up getting a Latin Grammy and all of that. That thing that when you have one song that makes it that big, then all the doors kind of open for you. Because when I got here, my dream was to work with the artists. I was okay with like writing songs and pitching them, but I always thought that working with artists was going to be way more interesting, and it would make it also easier to get the songs on the records. But that was like a dream. That was something that was very hard to accomplish. It was complicated to get the artists in the room for me. But then it came a moment where everything started to go in that direction. And right now, most of the times, I just work with the artists. I don't do like just co-writing sessions just to pitch songs. It's not often that I do that.
So when you're working with an artist, you mentioned being the therapist, sometimes with them. I mean, you're obviously privy to a sense of intimacy that few people would be. But in order to writing songs is about intimacy.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's because that's why sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Because, usually artists, they have a very special sensibility, so I usually connect with them in somehow. But ones are really weird, and when you can get anything out of it, and it's just sometimes you spend 3 hours with a person or 5 hours, and then you thank you very much. It was great to meet you, and that's it. I don't get depressed. I don't get frustrated. It's just that sometimes it happens and sometimes it don't. It's like going on a date with someone. You do have chemistry or you don't,
Yes.
It's like it just doesn't happen.
Yes. As I look at the physical space here, we're in your studio, which is a part of a larger complex. I believe that you built one of these structures here in order to house entourages.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, that used to be the garage, and now there's an office there. And in the back of the office is my kids' art studio, but it's probably going to be, I'm going to open another studio there because I just opened a new company. I'll tell you about it. But it happened once that an artist came here with the dog, the baby, the nanny, the PR person, the chauffeur, and I was like, man, I mean, this is all we have. What am I going to do with all these people if I actually need to spend 6-7 hours with this girl trying to come up with a song, and I can't have the baby crying and the dog barking and the chauffeur. I mean, it's like it's impossible. And then, the only option I had that day was to open my house and have everyone stay in my house, which is something that I never do, unless it's like Fonsi or Beto from La Ley or Natalia Jimenez, who are like family, and it's cool. So I said, what am I going to do? So I opened my house, and they all stayed in there. And when my kids came from school, especially my son, who's quite a character, he was extremely upset. He was like, who are all these people in the house? Why did you let these people in? And he was right. I mean, it's his house, and they're not supposed to be there. So I built the office there, so when people haven't, hopefully not more than 4 or 5, they can stay there. But it's interesting, you have to set up boundaries, because I'm very friendly and I love everyone to come here and everyone's invited, but the truth is that I have a family and I have to respect that too.
Yes. You have a number of dogs also kind of roaming around here.
Yeah, I have 3.
Which is great to see. And 2 of them are quite large.
Yeah. I wish I had more. I would have another one. I'm considering it. It's just that apparently there's a law here that you cannot have more than 3.
Unless you have a kennel license, I think.
Yeah. Or you have one, it's a service dog.
Yes, exactly.
So if I can put one as a service dog, I can have another one. I'll see.
All right. That's
I'll
good.
consider it.
Tell us about the new company.
Well, the new company is quite an interesting thing. It's a company for many years. I was, thinking, oh my God, I've never done anything for film and TV, and it's a little awkward that if I get 40, 30 cuts a year on records, I rarely have anything on film or on TV or on advertising. So I decided to put together this company, and I have Sarah, who's my right hand, and she runs everything there. And then I have a group of track guys, very young, that are really great and talented. So my idea, which is quite a challenge, is that I don't want to do the library thing. I just want to craft specific songs for specific things whenever needed. So the company's called Brand Tones On Demand because it's going to be on demand. It's not that I'm going to have a stock of 400 songs and pick one. Because usually what happens with clearances for film and TV is that I wrote a song with Fonsi and with Faraz, so a third goes to Cobalt, and the other third goes to Sony ATV, and the other third goes to Universal, and the vocals are his, and the master, God knows who owns it, so it gets very complicated to clear a song for specific use. Because usually when they want a song for a movie or for a film or for a TV show, you have like 48 hours notice and you have to get it done like this. So I said to myself, well, if I can write in English and I can write in Spanish and I can write a cumbia and I can write an alternative song and I can write a reggaeton, why don't I do the job and I write everything 100%, and then the kids, the work on my team, put it together, and then we decide who's going to sing it. But then it's still the same one stop. So we started probably like 2 weeks ago or maybe 3, and we'll see how it goes. It's a completely different market and field because as I know everyone in the record business, I don't know as many people in that field. But, I have a lot of good friends. I have Mike Knobloch from Universal at the board, and Julia Michaels and Jojo Villanueva. So little by little, I think I'll find a way to connect and see, if I can do that as well, because it's pretty interesting.
A lot of songwriters and composers are moving in those sorts of directions because record sales are doing what record sales are doing. So,
Yeah, I know.
I'm sure you do.
Know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that seems so good. Like you're adjusting and always moving and growing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't leave the record thing for a minute. I mean, I still have sessions every day for records that are being cut right now and that are coming out maybe in the fall or, in winter or summer next year. But still, I think I have to diversify and get into other avenues, because if not, I also get bored. It's just not only about what's going on with the record business. I like to do other things,
You referenced 30 or 40 cuts a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the average amount of cuts that you get?
Depending on the year, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But yes, between the Spanish versions and stuff I produce, and then what I do, in Spain, and what I do here in the States and Mexico, yeah, it's kind of the average.
That balance thing is interesting, Claudia. You reference because in addition to the tremendous amount of work that you do on so many levels, you are a mother. You maintain a life outside of just the creative work. How do you balance all of that?
Well, I'm usually exhausted. That's how you balance it. It's hard. Most of my friends that are successful songwriters, they don't have any kids. And if they do, they have one, and they go crazy already. So, I don't know. I'm very disciplined with my schedule, so I usually work from 11 to 6.
Yes.
And then I'm with the children. And then Wednesdays I don't work, and weekends I don't work. I want to be able to sit down with my kids every day and see how school went, and if they had a test, or how if they need help with homework. And if I'm here until 12 midnight every day and I don't see them, then I don't know what's going on. Then everything's going to get out of my hands, and it's a tough balance. I mean, they're older now. They're 13. They're twins. They're 13, and they understand that, if mommy has to go for a week to Spain to work, someone's going to take care of them, and then I'll be back, and I'll make sure I call them every day. At this point, when I come back, they want to hear what I wrote, and they say, oh, this is great, this is a hit, oh, this is not going to go anywhere, they're tough.
You're raising A&R people. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Claudia, as if you don't have enough to do, one of the things that we've noticed you doing lately is master classes.
Yeah. Well, I've done some stuff for ASCAP that I really enjoyed a couple times for the ASCAP Expo. And I just went and did another one in Mexico for a thing called Expo Compositores, which was like a songwriters expo. And I did, one day was a master class, long one, and then the other day was like a workshop with kids that wanted to be songwriters, and so I put them in groups and gave them titles, and they were working very hard for like 2-3 hours, and then I got to listen to what they did, and everyone had an opinion, and I made my comments, and it was really interesting. I might do one in Berkeley soon. I don't know yet when, because my schedule is pretty crazy, but that's the idea.
What do you tell people who want to be doing what you're doing, young writers that are coming up?
I don't know. I think that the thing that I learned the most from in all these years is that I write almost every day, and I co-write a lot. And I think that that's the only way to learn, like co-write and do co-writes with people from completely different genres, because that makes you become a little bit, like some people tell me that I'm a little bit of a chameleon. One day I'm writing reggaeton, and the other day I'm writing a ranchera, and the other day I'm writing an English song for like an urban group. But I like that. That makes it more interesting. And I think that I'm able to do that because I learned from co-writing with people, completely different people. So I'd say for a young writer that you should read a lot, and you should try to write every day. Challenge yourself a little and try to work on genres that are not the usual.
The stereophonic questions for you, Claudia. Number one, if you didn't do music, what would you be doing?
Traveling.
Yeah?
I would be traveling. That's what I like the most.
Would you find a profession where you would travel if you didn't do music?
I don't know. If I would retire or quit or say I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore, and I could afford just traveling the world, I would do that.
Traveling the world. Nice, nice. And stereophonic question number two.
Okay.
Your dream collaboration that has not yet occurred. Who would you like to write with or work with as an artist or a writer?
I don't think I have one.
Really?
I think I mean, anything can happen. I think I worked with everyone I dreamt of, and maybe it's one day I'm going to end up in the room with someone that I never thought of, and it's completely new or unknown, and it blows my mind. So I don't know. I really don't have a name.
Yeah, I'm just obviously looking, having worked with Enrique Iglesias, Ricky Martin, Fifth Harmony, John Legend, Josh Groban, Fantasia, Michael Bublé, Barbra Streisand. It's an amazing list of people. I
do like Ed Sheeran a lot because I think he's interesting and he's unique and he has a craft for songwriting. Being so young, that's amazing. But it's not that I would tell you, oh my God, I died. No, it's okay. If it happens, great.
I got it. Well, it sounds like you've got enough to do between your new recording project and between the new company and all of the travel and all of the hits that you write pretty much on a daily basis. Claudia Brant, no wonder you're exhausted.
Yeah, I'm exhausted. No, and I also got, I'm a Secret Genius Latin ambassador for Spotify. I need to put together a song camp for them, and that's something that I'm very excited about. I'm looking forward to to wrapping up the whole plan so that we can get started.
Well, we will keep you here no longer, even though we are in your house. Claudia Brant, always a pleasure to see you, and you're so inspiring on so many levels, and your energy is just undiminished, girl.
Yeah, no, I'm exhausted, but I'm full of energy and willing to do stuff, trying to make great music as much as I can.
One thing that's never changed, when I met you and to this moment, you are on fire. This episode of Stereophonic was produced and edited by Lindsay Tomasic.
Our theme music is used by permission from Ear Parade, Los Angeles. And our interstitial music is used by permission from Frameworks Music, Los Angeles. We hope you enjoyed today's episode featuring Claudia Brant. If you'd like to know more about Claudia, you can visit her website at claudiabrant.com, ClaudiaBrant.com. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to having you back for another episode of Stereophonic.